Hello there, and welcome to Weird Music on the Glumberger channel. A strange show where we look at albums of all sorts of different shapes and sizes, just generate a discussion about them each and every week. So today, we're looking at a very odd album, I think. So this is an album that I actually mentioned in episode 2 of Weird Music, released 2.5 years ago, I think it was, when I was discussing the inspiration behind the Name of Earth's album, Earth 2 Special Low Frequency version. I mentioned this particular album as being the source for the name, said I might get around to reviewing it, and then just didn't, right? Well, we're here now, and yeah, I've been wanting to talk about this album for, 2.5 years it seems, but just never got around to it. It's a very difficult one to write your thoughts about, though. We'll get to that in a bit later, though. But yeah, here to talk about this incredibly strange and unusual album. So yeah, today I present Environments 2, Tintinnabulation Special Low Frequency version. So, what is Environments 2 Tintinnabulation Special Low Frequency version? The original release, of this was essentially the second album within the Environment series, a series of 11 or so albums, all designed to inhabit strange and unusual environments. So, Tintinnabulation was originally released as the first track on the second album in this series, a half-hour track of computer-generated bell tones that was originally released in 1970. However, we're not looking at that album today. What we're actually looking at is the 1987 special release of the recording of Tintinnabulation, one that sees the entire half-hour recording slowed down to 16.5 RPM, a process that results in these incredibly strange resonating tones that have an emphasis on these very peculiar low-end rumbles that play around for about an hour in length. So, this album, Environments 2, Tintinnabulation Special Low Frequency version, weirdly enough, an album credited as having no artist. Doesn't make sense, right? Apparently all the albums within this series are like that, though. They're all credited as having no artist, just one of those things. However, we do know the identity behind it all. The identity being one Irv T-Bell, an American field recordist, graphic designer, and photographer who passed away at the age of 72, it seems. So T-Bell was known for his company Syntonic Research Inc., which T-Bell released the Environment series of recordings under as Psychoacoustic Recording Series. Very strange, very unusual, very interesting. So today we're of course looking at what I assume is one of his more well-known series, one of his more well-known recordings within the very series, Tintinnabulation, the special low-frequency version. An incredibly influential recording that inspired many interesting releases, as we all know, right? And so, with this recording being what it is, it's a very strange one to dive into, but I have been meaning to do this for, so long, so let's finally talk about it. So, it's a bit of a difficult one to actually discuss properly, but I will try my best. At its core, this is just pure minimalism. What you hear is essentially the entire bulk of the album itself, incredibly slow reverberating gongs and echoes from those computer-generated bell tones. It's almost a random assortment of these incredibly expansive low-end notes that resonate so precisely in the air. It's incredibly hypnotic, but it often comes with albums that present themselves, such as this one does, But there is a weird joy of discovery when you sit down to listen to it all. The pure randomness of the very notes themselves is one that's, always changing and morphing for the most part before landing on these more specific notes. And it feels like a pattern that's had little motifs scattered throughout it just to break up the form maybe. And it makes the particulars of the melody rather difficult to properly follow, even if there is one. And all you can really do is just let the sounds occur one by one. Let those resonating frequencies just do their thing as they interact with your very perception, it feels. It's a weirdly enjoyable textural experience as well, just the way the notes hover around with these rather metallic sounds almost, but they create these incredible swells of ambient tones as a result. It's a very interesting listening experience that feels genuinely quite zen for the most part, that kind of new age vibe that's so prevalent in these kinds of albums, I feel. So what's actually going on here then? As mentioned, Tintinnabulation was originally released as environments to Tintinnabulation Contemplative Sound, which was of course the original 30-minute recording. The original album also featured track B titled Dawn at New Hope, PA. So on that original recording, the version was a little bit faster than what we're looking at here, but it was still designed as a meditative and relaxing composition. But we do have a bit of insight behind it all, as Irv Thibault explained the process and reasoning behind the entire recording as follows. Tintinnabulation features 5 computer-generated bell tones tuned to what Thibault called an oriental theory of musical harmonics. From the liner notes, imagine 5 different bells, each as big as an average room, which are sounded very, very softly and reverberate for minutes afterward. This proto-ambient recording was the first in a series designed specifically for meditation and relaxation. It was intended for playback from 78 RPM all the way down to 16 2/3 RPM. Thibault released a special low-frequency version at 16 2/3 RPM for the CD edition. A note on the LP jacket that Syntonic Research Inc. would not be held responsible for damage caused to hi-fi systems playing Tintinnabulation at high volumes. Kind of interesting, kind of funny as well, I think. The version we're looking at is that very special release, of course, the special low-frequency version, where the recording was presented in arguably its slowest form possible. And by slowing that entire recording down, you get so much more emphasis on those low-end frequencies and tones that occur from the bell tones playing so slowly and patiently. It's perhaps why the entire thing has that incredibly large and expansive feeling to it as all occurs, And it's fascinating to me how playing the composition at these different speeds results in very different vibes for the most part. The faster version still hypnotizes and entrances you, but the slowest version is by far the most fascinating version to me, as how it manages to emphasize such peculiar moments of sound interaction as the entire composition just occurs. It also reminds me a little bit of process music, of setting up a scenario, examining the result after the song has played along for an adequate amount of time, It's odd as well, as there's an effect to it all being so incredibly formless in terms of its full structuring, as the track is just intended to be listened to in a large number of different ways, all of which affect the presentation of the entire thing in rather subtle ways. It gives me the sense that this type of recording can be experienced by the listener's choosing in a lot of respect, with their interaction of it actually affecting the overall vibe. And it's interesting how, as a conceptual piece, the composition does consider the listener's experience of how exactly they are experiencing the recording. Like, we all have our own tempos to help relax us, and this composition can be sent to any, whichever one works for you personally. But yep, an incredibly strange and bizarre record, no doubt. Of course, my draw to this record was, as mentioned in our second episode of Weird Music, the obvious correlation with Earth 2's special low-frequency version, of course. Very, very likely this is the album that Earth was nodding to, right? And discovering the album is like discovering some secret, untold secret in music, this strange but incredibly relaxing ambient journey that explores New Age notions almost, as well as these notions of texture and patience and pacing things. I think a lot of it does express to me, those kind of Zen New Age vibes, of using music to relax you and change your environment. But the treatment of here, it's so much more experimental than anything I've come across recently. Speaking of, though, as well, of things I've come across, in my research for this album, I did come across a lot of similarly titled environment albums, and one I came across in a bit of an interesting way, so a little bit of story time here. So, when trying to find physical copies of, Environments 2 Tintinnabulation Special Low Frequency version to buy, I came across an entirely different album instead. So on eBay, in the UK, nobody is selling Environments 2 Special Low Frequency version, but somebody was selling an album titled Environments 2 River Bells. Bit confusing. I had no idea what this was. This was the first time I'd come across it, but I didn't want to pass up on the chance to discover something that I'd never heard of. So yeah, I bought the incredibly strange album. And yeah, Environment 2 River Bells, Water, whatever it's called. New age ambient music, of course, isn't it? Very weird. We do have another Environments 2 album to look at in a future episode of Weird Music that's already been made up, is already ready for release. I just want to get this particular video done and out the way first. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of Environments 2 Bells River personally, but maybe some of you will like it. But yeah, you can find out for yourselves in the future video on it whenever we decide to release it. To go back to Environments 2 Tintinnabulation Special Low Frequency version, though, I'm not really sure what else to say about this release. I've always been incredibly intrigued by it, but trying to write down thoughts about an album that always just manages to pull you into a state of relaxation and just leaves you feeling incredibly lazy and unable to do any writing, it's just difficult to do the writing process, I find. And in a lot of respects, it's kind of a good thing in a weird sense. Especially something I want in my music, especially when I'm just looking to zone out for an hour. It's good that an album can do that. Incredibly hypnotic, but so zen as a result, and it's enjoyable to have playing around you. But of course, the caveat being, it's very difficult to write about, isn't it? And I think that's the reason why it's taken so long to write this particular review. It's mostly due to just zoning out whenever I play this record. And as a result, I get nothing done in the time. But things like that is the very experience of music itself, which is the main focal point of what I'm trying to present to you, the audience of this very show. My experience of these very albums. And I like it. I'm genuinely a fan of that experience, and especially the one that this particular album gives off when you listen to it. It's incredibly lulling, and it just forces you to zone out and become unsuspended in time as you float off into the ether, inhabiting those incredibly strange environments as your mind wanders far and wide into the vast open landscapes. I think it's brilliant. Both the experience of it and as well just how the entire thing sounds, this incredibly slowed down computer generated bell tones just ringing out with that incredible low end, resonating for such long passages of time, feeling like the swinging pendulum of some kind. And before we close off, one final point I would like to mention though. It kind of fascinates me how this particular album sort of came about and stuff. And looking at the various albums within the Environment series, a fair few of them mostly incorporate field recordings, it seems, of, some kind to help establish the specific environment. However, when it comes to Environments 2, what we're given is actually an artificial sound. And it kind of generates its own naturalistic environment inside your head, though, when you hear it. And for me, I imagine this very zen environment of some kind of temple situated in the middle of a forest, which I find very interesting as it kind of contrasts in my head natural environment, artificial sound source. Maybe, in particular, this was part of the intent T-Ball had when producing this particular work. Maybe, who knows? I just thought it was kind of interesting, that contrast between the two states, which is why I just quickly wanted to mention it before we close off. But yeah, with that, I think we will come to the end of our episode of Weird Music there. Finally gotten around to talking about this album. As mentioned, it's taken us, 2.5 years to get to. But we got there eventually. But yeah, a truly spectacular album of minimalism that helped pave the way for some truly tremendous albums. So yeah, I've provided links in the description to both the Bandcamp release, which consists of the original non-low frequency version, as well as a link to a YouTube video of the low frequency version as well that we are looking at today. So if you're interested, go and check them out, why not? So yeah, in a future video, of course, we will be diving into Environment 2 River Bells, discovering what the hell that one's about, as well as maybe exploring some new age weird stuff that I've been discovering. I've got a lot of weird new age albums that I want to discuss on the show because they're kind of interesting, kind of weird. We will see. For now, I wish you all the best. Hope you take care, all the best, and bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.